Pai nosso, que estais no céu, santificado seja o vosso nome. Venha a nós o vosso reino, seja feita a vossa vontade, assim na terra como no céu, assim na terra como no céu. O pão nosso de cada dia dai-nos hoje, ó Senhor. Perdoai as nossas dívidas, assim como perdoamos aos nossos devedores. Não deixeis cair em tentação, mas livrai-nos de todo o mal. Não deixeis cair em tentação, mas livrai-nos de todo o mal.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this Saturday morning with the series of talks that was organized by the United States Spiritist Federation every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And today we're going to have our guest, our special guest, MARCIA TRAJANO from Georgia, from Atlanta. And she's going to be talking about meaningful conversation with your emotional self. But before we bring MARCIA to talk to us, we are going to have, as usual, our initial prayer to prepare this moment that we will start by closing our eyes so that we can concentrate. And we thank our spiritual friends for being with us, for inspiring us, for helping us open our minds and our hearts to prepare for the message of this morning. We ask them for the inspiration to our friend and guest, MARCIA TRAJANO, that she can bring to us the messages that she prepared with love and with the spirituality beside her. So thank you again. Please be with us now and always, and so be it. So, hi, MARCIA. Nice to meet you. Thank you for being here with us today. And before we let you bring the message of this morning, let's introduce you formally to those of our friends who still don't know you too well. So let's see, MARCIA. MARCIA TRAJANO is one of the founders of the Christian Spiritist Community of Atlanta and a board member of the U.S. Spiritist Federation. Yes, we work together very closely. Very nice. She's been a Spiritist more than 20 years and has been giving talks and leading Spiritist study groups in English and in Portuguese. With a master's degree in management of technology and a project management professional certification, MARCIA currently works as a project manager. So remember, everyone, before MARCIA starts, to be prepared for questions and answers right after, so make sure to send yours throughout the talk. Thank you, and now it's you, MARCIA.
Thank you, Tanya, so much. So, when I was asked to do this Spiritist talk, I just couldn't believe it. You see, I have embarked in this, what I call, wonderful journey of learning about myself through the facilitation of study groups on inner transformation 22 years ago. It was only recently that I came to fully understand how emotions play a critical part in knowing myself and be better able to grow emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. I read Joanna de Angelis, but I had never really met the truth of her teachings until I was asked to facilitate a study of her book, Existential Conflicts. The discussions each week were like pearls of knowledge and self-awareness that has motivated me to further read and lead discussions in English on this subject. I am now leading a study group about self-discovery in English. And because Joanna de Angelis discusses the teachings of Allan Kardec through a psychological lens, it invites you to confront yourself and grow. Marlon Reikdal, considered one of the world's experts of Joanna de Angelis and Allan Kardec, gifted us with his book in Portuguese, Cultivating Emotions. This talk has been inspired by Kardec, Joanna, and Marlon. I am so grateful for all the teachings and Tanya and the United Spiritist Federation for the opportunity to talk about this journey. So, in this book, and as you can see with the Portuguese title, Cultivating Our Emotions, which Marlon wrote 5 years ago, 2015, it shows a path to our inner transformation and stimulates us, all of us, to identify, to understand, and to deal with our emotions in a more creative and conscious way. The premise of the book is that if we do nothing, right, our default ways is to either repress or control those emotions. And Marlon, in this book, he teaches us the art of cultivating those emotions. So one may pause and ask, why? What for? Right? So emotional intelligence is the ability to recognize and name our own emotions and those of other people. It is in fact so important that it is now taught in schools and businesses. But despite how important emotional intelligence is, most of us are really not clear of what is an emotion. It is quite generally hard to talk about emotions, to go deep inside yourself, to pinpoint what are you feeling, right? We can think about some rather recognizable moments and the emotions that we have felt. So let's pretend perhaps this morning all of us can relate to a certain worry as an emotion about the email that we sent to a family member about some difficult news. What about the excitement that we feel right now about the plans we have for the holiday weekend? Or how the entire world felt the fear of this new unknown virus just earlier this year. The reality is that in our day-to-day, we don't really pay attention to our emotional self. Yet, in our lives, the knowledge of emotion is an extremely important commodity. If we reflect upon our material lives, our day-to-day, our ordinary lives, our emotions are used constantly, exploited by politicians in their election campaigns, or carefully manipulated by algorithm crafted by companies that range from, say, Facebook to Amazon, Google, etc., to influence our lives and our purchasing decisions. So Marlon's book reintroduces to us a very old notion that all emotions can be boiled to a handful of basic emotions. The 4 emotions highlighted in his book can be referenced as the building blocks of our entire emotional life. Our emotions are powerful drivers, and if we learn to direct them, can push us toward our moral evolution. So, in a basic way, we can think of emotion like a simple question, right? You experience an emotion, it's externally driven. So you experience an emotion because of an external predicament. So some examples of how it is totally hardwired on purpose in our brains is that they're there to protect us from harm. So let's say, oh, we're hiking, and unexpectedly we come face to face with a bear. Oh, what happens to us? Our pupils quickly dilate, our heart pumps really fast, we are frightened. We run very, very fast. The problem with this basic depiction of emotion is that it doesn't entirely capture what an emotion is. It does not provide a whole picture. On one hand, it is important to recognize the reactive physiological nature of our emotions, but on the other hand, it's not the only reason we feel the way we do at any given moment. As we think about having meaningful conversations with our emotional self, I would like here today to propose that we may feel emotions more intensely just because we are stopping to think or talk about it. And in fact, recent development in cognitive science has shown us that emotions are not simple reflexes, like I said before, but immensely complex. They are like these elastic systems that respond both to our biology that we inherited, but also this culture that we live in now. As cognitive phenomena, they are shaped by our bodies and by our thoughts. So what comprise our thoughts? Our concepts, our language, our philosophies, our religion. As I mentioned earlier, Joanna D'Angeli's psychological interpretations of the teachings of Allan Kardec have had an enormous impact on me. Let's just spend a few minutes reviewing some ideas that Kardec brought to us about this topic. In Genesis chapter 18, item 8, we find a reference there that humanity has arrived at a period of transformation. It must rise within the hierarchy of worlds. This reference found in the last chapter of Genesis, which was published in 1868, can also be found and further explained in the book Planetary Transition by Manuel Filomeno de Miranda. The idea is that we are transitioning from a world of trials and expiations, but we are not going to become pure spirits, not yet. Our desire, and it's inbred in all of us, to move forward, to accelerate, right, is only need to be decelerated because we need to focus on our inner transformation. And instead of thinking that we can become what we're not ready to be, and as a result, believing that we are there, right, but we're not. Let's focus on our humanity. We are humans. We have emotions. We should not suppress or repress that we're humanity and all of its contradictions to pretend to be what we're not yet. In the Gospel, according to Spiritism, Kardec refers to the progression of the worlds. Generally speaking, there are 5 groups: primitive world, the world of trials, of expiations, the world of regeneration, happy worlds, or the celestial worlds. The primitive world is our home, is the world where the human race had its first lives, its first incarnations. In that world, we had no discernment of what good and evil was. So, for the purpose of this talk, I am going to refer many times, potentially, about evil, but I would like for all of us to understand evil as is translated as the pain we're able to inflict ourselves and others. We see ourselves defaulting to that earlier primitive self best in some of our reactions. Let's think about our emotional explosions, right? When we're stuck in traffic, when we're betrayed, when our worst self is exposed. So our lack of control of our emotional selves is largely related to our lack of knowledge and lack of discernment of our own inner selves. So Let's move on to the second world, a little bit more advanced. This world is our current home, the world of trials and expiation. In this world, our awareness is developed from a state of total lack of knowledge to a place where we are just mostly evil. Well, as explained before, we live lives where we often cause pain to ourselves and to others. Jonah DeAngelis discussed this so well in her book, Existential Conflicts. We have so much pain, and it takes courage to be able to confront all of our inner conflicts. And this is mostly because we're not able to see them. We are so fragile. But the good news is that we're given the opportunities to overcome the pain and learn from it. If and only if we have the courage and the discipline to confront ourselves, instead of use escape mechanisms that we're actually so good at. And those escape mechanisms range from drug to social media addiction, from being an alcoholic, workaholic, shopaholic, or even obsessively compulsive organizers. Existential conflicts include selfishness, laziness, resentment, jealousy, anxiety, cruelty, violence, even stress and phobias. Those conflicts permeate all of our attitudes. They impact our behaviors, and because of it, we end up become quite good at hiding them. How to do this? We create masks to meet the expectations and demands of the world. And we, as I said, are quite good at it. And we end up believing in those lies that we have created. The more we believe in those lies, the harder it is to really look at ourselves, our true selves, our emotional selves. Just in passing, as I finish this thought process, I would like to just confirm, right? I mentioned before the five worlds, the groups of worlds, but the world of regeneration, the happy worlds, and celestial worlds. And at that point, many lifetimes from now, we'll finally be rid of our capacity to hurt ourselves and others. That's when we are truly celestial beings. I would like to take this time to highlight that the world of regeneration differs from the world that we live in, the world of trials and expiations, because we now can see the impact of our ability to cause pain. Evil, as such, no longer is seen everywhere, where wars, corruption, mental disorders, and misery will no longer be the norm. And I would like to highlight the discussion of the progression of the worlds, because once we're aware of this evil, this ability to cause pain that exists so much in us, right? We no longer live in a life where we are not aware of our impulses, of our aggressions, hatred, delusions, etc. So, the proposal that we have here today of having a meaningful conversation about our emotional self is a proposal to understand our emotions as based in the Spiritist teachings. Kardec posed the same questions in his book, Genesis, when he urges to not only develop our intelligence, but our feelings. So it is quite clear that while we learn from studying stimulates our reasoning, our minds, it often does not touch our heart or emotions, right? Instead, we start to think of ourselves as someone with the propensity to protect ourselves, our ego, our masks, our emotions. We should start honoring our true self and embrace our emotions. So I propose, instead of memorizing sacred books, the Bible, the gospel, etc., let's live their teachings. Let's practice what we're learning. Let's translate what we understand into our behaviors and attitudes. But what does it all have to do with feelings? Vanity, jealousy, envy, for example. Well, I invite all of us to be brave and to learn about all those inherent existential conflicts and work through our emotions. Let us exercise this path that goes beyond our intellect and move to the realm of our feelings. If we are to have meaningful conversations about and with our emotional self, we must understand how to deal with the most common emotions in our lives, right? So, joy, sadness, fear, anger. These emotions are part of our daily lives every day, regardless of who we are, regardless of our gender, age, nationality, level of education, religion. The reality is that we all live those emotion lives, but we either ignore or because we don't know how, we can control them. So I would like to bring a different reference, and you may frown upon me, but it's really interesting because within the Disney Pixar's environment, the movie Inside Out gives us this whimsical portrayal of our own minds, right? It invites all the viewers to take a moment and look inside themselves. It's interesting because the founding member and the faculty director of the magazine called Science-Based Insights for Meaningful Life, Keltner, served as a consultant on the film. And the fundamental messages about emotions are very consistent in that movie with what we're talking about here, as well as with scientific research. And somehow it just is a beautiful opportunity to open another door to conversations to a group, a demographic group that ranges from very young to quite old. So the first message is happiness is not about joy. Joy, of course, is the main name of the character, but our pursuit for happiness drives all of our behaviors, right? So in the moment, quite a pivotal moment in the film, the main character allows herself to feel sadness in addition to fear and anger, right? So the idea was that she wanted to run away from home. But as a result, in this movie, she decides not to go through with her plan. And because of it, then she reunites with her family and gives her a deeper sense of happiness and contentment in the comfort she gets from her parents, even though her emotions are mixed and she's sad and she's afraid. So, what is the message of this? It's that those of us who are open to experience what is called emo diversity, right? So a diversity of emotions, which means we are open to feel in touch, connect with our emotions, positive and negative, have better mental health. That's it. So let us look at it and think about it. Let's mindfully embrace instead of suppress our emotions, especially the emotions that our social communities frown upon. And some examples of those repressed emotions include, let's say, anger, sadness, and fear. Anger, perhaps when we have bursts of anger, don't know how to manage it, and we can actually become aggressive or even violent, right? Or sadness, where there's so many of us worldwide, almost as a pandemic in that area, are depressed. And we are very sadly witnessing this tragic result with increasing number of suicide globally. And finally, fear, where anxiety I see in its omnipresent stage, panic attacks, obsessive compulsive disorders, phobias, and all sorts of anxiety disorders highlight the issue of how we don't know how to deal with our fears. And finally, the fourth emotion that the book highlights, which is joy, right? Even then, it can have some negative impact. When we don't know how to manage our lifelong pursuit of happiness, when we seek joy in areas that are very superficial, that may lead to only sensorial experience and the pleasures that we seek, we may indeed find ourselves with many compulsions, right? We already talked about some, but alcohol, sex, exhibitionism, unbridled search for power, lives built on an artificial opportunity looking for joy. So, one mechanism that we can use is, simply put, to be able to recognize our emotions and learn to cognitively reappraise them in each situation. In other words, be able to reinterpret what this means and to shift our emotional response. The other mechanism, which Marlon explains so well in his book, is instead of avoiding or denying our emotions, we should simply accept as a very important part of our lives. So, mindfully embracing an emotion just means that rather than getting caught up in the drama of an emotional reaction, a mindful person is now able to be kind with himself or herself and observe the emotion without judging it. This type of behavior allows us to create a space to look at our root cause of how and why we're emoting to any given situation. Choose a healthy response, and open a way to self-discovery, self-awareness, a way to see who we truly are without our masks. So, in conclusion, all the problem of our lives and our society result from an emotional life that is not healthy. So, Tanya, I spoke too fast. Do you want to take it from here and ask some questions about the subject? I cannot hear you, Tanya.
Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you.
Now, definitely we can have a good conversation about all this, because these are very important points that sometimes we get caught up, right, in our lives and not really knowing our emotions. We just keep going, right? It's very true, and how important it is. We definitely can ask some questions, and as it goes, if there are other points you want to bring to us, definitely we
Thank
can
you.
do that. Okay, so let's start. Okay, so let's talk about emotional intelligence. That is something that we've been really listening to. More recently, we hear more often, right? And so it's very important that we understand what that means. So, what can you tell us about being emotionally intelligent? What does that really mean?
Thank you. Thank you, Tanya. So, to be truly emotionally intelligent, we need to understand it starts with our words, right? Our ideas of how we should live and the emotions that are attached to them. So, for example, and I use the Disney Pixar's movie, right? When we celebrate joy, it actually has been confirmed that we are better. We're better workers. We're better parents. We're better partners. We're better friends. So this century, and especially Western civilization, we're always pursuing, looking for opportunity to be happy, to celebrate joy. But surprise, surprise, if we go back only 5 centuries ago, in the 16th century, historians say that was actually the opposite. It was sadness that was supposed to make us better. There, at the time, we find many authors writing about how to cultivate sadness in order to become better people, better and more resilient, right? So this is very interesting and quite simplistic, but it's really interesting to me to think, what might our emotional language be talking to us about what we feel, what we value, who we think we are, what we judge is important, right? And what I like to highlight here, Tanya, is to remind us of how powerful is the link of how we think to how we feel. So true emotion intelligence requires that we understand our social, political, cultural forces that have shaped what we come to believe about our emotions, and interwoven with the topic of the book by Marlon, right? How joy, hatred, anger might change who we are. So what I say here is that we should be able to measure our emotions, right? And to do that, we need to learn about ourselves. We need to really learn to listen, to understand what is important to us, what is important to others, what are assumptions that we have, how to create this platform, this emotionally intelligent platform, to really be able to truly speak and learn about ourselves.
And it is a real challenge because we feel that a lot of us don't deal well with feelings, right? Or at least try to put on the side and not really uh, taking that into account. It's kind of keep living life and without really knowing what we feel, what we really have in our minds, and confuse things. It's almost like feeling weak if you treat about feelings instead of just doing whatever you're supposed to do in your material life, right? It's
Yes.
much easier
Mhm.
sometimes just to block, to get distracted that way, right? Anyway, so let's see one more. It feels that we are taught and being angry is wrong, that we should be grateful, so sadness should be suppressed because we have so many blessings. Are there wrong emotions and feelings?
No. So this is very interesting, right? In researching the history of emotions and understanding that sadness at some point was actually the emotion that everybody strived not so long ago. We see that there are no bad emotions. In fact, the idea that we ourselves judge what is right, what is wrong, that's what leads us to create those masks, right? And it's the thought that Joanna de Angelis puts so well in her psychological studies, and I've become really taken by studying, especially the Jungian psychology, where she bases a lot of her work, right? So from that perspective, it's important that the masks that we create based on our own judgment, so that the cultural environment is because we are pushed to meet that demands and expectations of society. We are born and we live in the material world, and we are pushed, we're driven by attaining to that. And sometimes being angry and out of control does not meet the demands, for example, and I'm just going to pretend, of a CEO of a global company, right? That CEO must have a very controlled posture. So how does that person deal with the anger or sadness, like you said, Tanya? How does this person deal with it? And the majority of us simply suppress it. And what we find is that actually to suppress it is we are this closed loop system, our body with our minds and our emotions, that if you suppress it, it eventually comes up, and eventually it comes through by unfortunately mental or physical illnesses. So for example, we talked about fear with panic attacks, with anxiety, right? Or sadness with depression, or anger, and and I'm just giving examples here, but a cancer, or some issues with your gastrointestinal tract. So it's very interesting that the first thing that we need to do is stop the judgment, like you mentioned before, and look into how to accept yourself, to love yourself without having to judge who you are. And once you do this, then you're able to reinterpret, is this the appropriate response to that external incident? And I say this because one of the things that is very important for us to know is that emotions are externally driven, whereas feelings are internally driven. So when we start to look at our reaction to emotionally driven incidents, emotions, right? We are now going to see, well, what caused me to be so angry? What is causing me to be so sad? What is causing me to be so afraid? And that voyage of self-awareness and self-discovery is what we should be pursuing too.
It feels like it accumulates, right? If you really don't recognize what you're feeling and who you really are, it catches up with you, right? I mean, it gets to a point where you cannot avoid it, even in illnesses, or like you said, right? So it is a journey that we cannot avoid. Sounds that way, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, so Yasko, hi Yasko, nice have a question from you. Fear of others' judgment, parents, authority, seems an ancient imprint as a way to survive, to foresee the danger, especially for women in old times. How to deal today with this old archetype of fear, guilt of other judgment?
Thank you so much for that, right? And you're absolutely right. I started earlier talking about this is hardwired in us. The fear, like you said, for certain judgment is hardwired. It's how we protected ourselves. It's how we evolved. The question here, and it's very important, is, for example, I gave the hypothetical view that we're hiking and we come face to face with a bear and our body explodes with emotions, right? Adrenaline, and the pupils dilate, and our heart goes faster, etc., etc. What I see here is the importance of us understanding, when we know ourselves and we confront our emotions, is to then pause, to reinterpret. Why is this, first of all, is this emotion really relevant, right? Is this something, like you said, is an archetype that we've learned and it's imprinted in ourselves? And how can we evolve from it? Because we have evolved spiritually, our society has evolved, our humanity has evolved, our planet has evolved, and it's important to understand that maybe those fears are no longer based in reality. So today, I'm afraid that I have to speak to an audience in front of a camera, and my heart too is racing. And I think to myself, Marcia, breathe. I'm not going to die, right? The worst case scenario is that I speak so fast that I compress an hour's worth of discussion into 30 minutes. It happened, but nothing is going to happen to me. And so we start to have those dialogues and not suppress. The fear is real, right? But we start to understand the root cause may be, I don't know. Let's think about it. Then maybe it's based on my sense of vanity. I want to look good, right? I am speaking to peers and so many amazing people. What am I doing Is it the fear that I'm killing my ego, that my ego who carefully constructed this mask of I can't speak in front of a camera about this topic? And so with that, we start to calm ourselves and are able to now meet with those emotions, with honoring them, but not being controlled by them. I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, a lot of challenges, right? But that's how we're evolving. That's what you're saying, right?
Mm-hmm.
We definitely cannot avoid who we are and the things we feel so that we can conquer to the next, going to the next step, right?
Correct.
So if we don't recognize, if we think it's all good, we stay there. And things take a little longer for us to get to those worlds that you mentioned before, right? Which
Yes.
is definitely what we want, to get to that pure spirit condition. But there is
Yeah.
a way to conquer. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Let's see. We have some more questions. So you mentioned wars and corruption are part of our inability to recognize our emotions. Can you explain that?
Yes, thank you, Tanya. So when I mentioned wars and corruption, oh, drugs and misery, right? I was talking about the world that we live in. So this is the context, a very good one. So thank you, Tanya, for us to understand why do I say that the world that we live in, this world of trials and expiation, uh, it's dominant evil, right? So I further explained evil as the capacity to hurt ourselves and hurt others. Why do I say that? If we think of ourselves, we are not evil. I hope no one who's listening to this is an evil person. But the fact is, if we put that aside, right? We've had I don't know, good families. We're living lives of love and learning, etc., etc. We're here today. We could be elsewhere at this morning, this beautiful morning, but we look for that predominance of evil by looking at how many instances of wars we live through today, and terrorism and corruption and drugs. And they all are related, Tanya, to this one source, which is those four basic emotions. So when we see war, it is directly related with my own, and it's in each and one of us, my own inability to deal with my basic emotions, right? We cannot deal with war as a race, as humanity, if we're not able to control, to confront, to control, and manage the anger that we experience every day. And this anger is so real. It can be somebody who said something that did not match what you're expecting, the carefully branded you that you put out in the world. I'm talking about your masks, right? Or you are in traffic. It just it may just simply be that I am running late and I'm trying to move, and there's an X in front of me, and I'm just angry, and I get really outbursts of anger just by driving a car. Another type of basic emotion, Tanya, is uh, fear and depression, right? And which tells us that we cannot really be ready to deal about suicide prevention, for example, if we don't know how to deal with sadness within ourselves in our daily lives. So societally, all of those ills result from the same issue. We don't know how to deal with our emotional selves. And that's the purpose of this talk today, is to open our hearts, open our minds to really start to look at ourselves with love, with respect, and to open to the ability to confront our emotional lives.
Yeah. And it's so easy for us to move into blaming others, blaming the society. You know, everybody else needs to change and be better and to accommodate our own needs or what
Correct.
we think we need. Correct?
Yeah.
It's so the moment that we decide really that we are the ones in charge of our own happiness, like you were talking before, in a spiritual way, because sometimes people confuse happiness with getting things, right? Oh, I'll be very happy when I have that car. I'll be very happy. Well,
Correct.
it's so confusing, right? Do you want to tell us a little bit about this confusion? This is me asking you, right? About this confusion of emotions versus those needs that they're not really needs. It's what we make it up.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah, and I would say I would reframe your question, Tanya, with the notion that, and I mentioned earlier that our society right now really focuses on happiness, right? We all, there's this common inherent thread to all of us. Two things, actually. One is that we all have a problem that leads us to be in pain. But the other one is that we all want to be happy. And many times we confuse happiness with joy, right? To enjoy is often confused with this euphoria. Some examples. Oh, I don't know. You mentioned some material examples, but then so many others. For example, Tanya, when we talk about for Brazilians, right? If some people spend their whole year waiting for Carnival because it's an explosion of joy and euphoria, or going to a concert, right? So it's still an experience, but it's an artificial induced experience of joy. It has to be made true. And the idea here is that when we are truly looking at ourselves, we start to see that deep down inside of us, what gives us happiness is a sense of peace, right? It's a sense of balance and understanding all of the things that you truly are. So one of the things that's very interesting when you start talking about ego and self and conscious and unconscious, right, in the psychological series by Joanna DeAngelis, those books, and Joanna really teaches, and I would say this is the best a gift that I could give to anyone here. If you have not read, please do take the moment to access those books, because they're just amazing. But when we start talking about this natural half of our lives, right, our natural desire to be successful, and unfortunately success is interpreted as I am what society tells me is successful person. So my beautiful car, my beautiful house, I don't know, my beautiful career, my beautiful family, right? We want to be the best of the best. That's what we learn, and it's okay to want that. The problem is when we become entrapped by owning or experiencing things are the only two drivers for you to be happy. Did I answer the question, Tanya?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Those are important things because we feel that this time, I mean, so many people suffer from anxiety because it feels like it's never enough, right?
Yes.
Is that we're quick enough? Is that things don't happen the way we think they should be, like, So it's definitely a time that talking about emotions, knowing ourselves, and
Yeah.
living this moment, in this pandemic right now, giving us this opportunity of stopping and being more with our relatives and family,
Correct.
right? I mean, kind of as if the spirituality told us, oh, stop, let's think about it, right?
Yes,
The way.
yes, indeed, Tanya. Before you give your next question, I would say that, and it's just funny. So forgive me for my digression here, but as COVID is quote unquote plaguing the world with a new virus, which led to tremendous impact, right? Consequences of social isolation, which is the economy based on production and acquisition and consumption of those products. It doesn't work anymore. But we have to think maybe that's all we need to do, right? We need to come to the time to learn to consume us, our feelings, ourselves, to be courageous, to look at what is all of this that is inside of us. So very well put. I digress because I was thinking in terms of during Y2K 20 years ago, where the world looked at the potential crisis as the end of the world. Today too, many are thinking this is the end of the world, everybody's going to die. But for spiritists, it's a time for thinking this is a great time. It's the looking at it from a positive lens. This is the time to journey, go inside of our own selves and learn a little bit more and learn how to love ourselves, right?
Yeah, hopefully it's the end of the world as we know it and getting better, right?
Correct, absolutely. Yes.
So Glaucio is with us. Hi, Glaucio, and he has a question. How can both recognize our shortcomings and still love ourselves? We do. How we reconcile, right, those situations?
Yeah. So Glaucio, I would like to take a journey, my own journey, right? In when so many years ago, when I began teaching about inner transformation, and it was a world that was revealed to me to have the courage to look at myself, right? But at that time, I see, and that's what's different from learning from Joanna DeAngelis, is that the lens that I've been given with those psychological series of books about inner transformation is where we look at our moral transformation not from an intellectual perspective only. So what am I talking about? When we stop at the intellectual exercise of identifying, right, with the self-awareness, self-discovery, identifying all the things you are, and you stop there, then the tendency is two things. Either you repress them, you suppress all of who you are to become what you would like to be, or what's the desired state, or you go crazy and you start judging yourselves. And the idea that is put so beautiful to us with the studies of Kardec, Joanna, Marlon, is when we talk about emotional selves, our emotional selves, is the fact that first and foremost, you need to learn to be very strong about looking at your shadow, right? With Jungian psychology, look at all those things that you reject about yourselves, all those things that you reject. Why? Because they don't match that carefully crafted mask to meet outside world demands and expectations, right? So by having the courage to look and slowly carve in our shadow and understand in our subconscious minds what it is that I really am, right? That I mentioned the hypothetical idea of a CEO that needs to be very controlled, but that person may be completely uncontrolled. And how do you go back and say, it's not because I'm bad, it's because anger is part of who I am? How do I reinterpret that anger? How do I understand what is the root cause of that anger? How do I love myself, not despite of my emotions, but because of my emotions? Because the more you look into who you are, and the more you forgive yourself, or for the more you embrace yourself, the more you are able to love and love others and be a better person.
It feels that's a great point. Love ourselves. It feels that if we see ourselves as this immortal spirit, right?
Correct.
That we're destined to become perfect, because that law of progress will take us there, pushing us forward.
Uh-huh.
And if we accept ourselves that we are apprentices, we are in this process, it feels a little lighter, right, Marcia? It's
Yeah,
not like
yeah, yeah.
there's kind of, oh my gosh, I still feel angry. Oh, I'm a bad person. No, I'm not a bad person, right? I'm just recognize that it's still in me, that is there for me to be able to shape myself in, somebody better. I kind of
Yeah,
it is a process, right? If we
yeah.
accept it's a process.
And I can even talk about a different example. So let's say we start this journey, right? And oh my goodness, I now can see that I'm a very vain person. How is my vanity expressed? Vanity is just you want to meet the illusion of being X, right? The majority of us think of vanity as the mirror. Look in the mirror and seeing a beautiful whatever. But the vanity can be in I want to. I'm really in love, if you will, with that illusion that I created of a powerful person or a whatever, right? Or a young and desired person, or a very intellectually stimulated person, intelligent person. So let's pretend we go for the most basic one. I am a vain person, and in order to be able to look good despite aging, right? I will spend my money, my right, I will invest in the most expensive outfits and jewelry and cars and everything to satisfy my need to look good. The problem, on one hand, as I was mentioned before, is if we don't go deep, we end up hating ourselves for something that it's okay. It's okay to look good. It's okay to have a comfortable life, right? So instead of removing the accoutrements, right, removing all of the things that were trying to make me to fulfill the this hole that I have inside of me that wants to be what perhaps I think I'm not, right? Instead of removing all of them, I need to look at it. Why is it so important? Why do I feel perhaps a sense of not being self-worthy, of feeling good? Do I need really those expensive clothes to feel good? Right? So the question is going back down and looking for our emotional self deep down and see what it is that I need to do to not only match that external vision that I created, carefully crafted and created for me, right? This image of whatever into what I am not, and look into what I'm not and see you too are good, even though it does not meet perhaps what the world is saying is good. I hope I didn't
And
say too much.
yeah, maybe we can take that vanity, the example you
Mhm.
used, to good things, right? So let's prepare a great
Yeah.
presentation, right? Talk
Yeah.
about goodness. Let's be there and looking the way we look with the
Yeah.
age or whatever, not necessarily with the most expensive clothes, but talking about something that can help people
Hmm.
or help ourselves to
Yeah.
grow, right? It's
And it's just to finalize the thought is it's really looking at the drivers, right? It's okay to take care of yourself, but why are you taking care of yourself, and is taking care of yourself making you a prisoner of that? Does this make sense? So for example, in a different world, right, I am arrogant. It's really all about having this posture of arrogance, of pride, of power, but deep down inside we all know that we're powerless. Right? So I can either look at my need to be there or be truly powerful. So look inside of you, of us, to understand what it is that I feel, because it's all created by us. What do I feel that I don't meet what the world expects of me? And by being your authentic self, we are truly embracing who we are, and we grow in the process.
Well, it feels to me that this is really the basis of what we learn so much in Spiritism about inner
Sure.
transformation, right?
Yes.
It's, we hear that all the time, and some people ask, how can I do this? How can I do my inner transformation?
Yeah.
It's so abstract. It feels that you're bringing to us some points that are very concrete in order to help us in this process of transforming ourselves. Is that what you're bringing us?
Yes, 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 indeed.
Very good. So let's see. Oh, Claudia is with us, Claudia Nunes. So let's see what she's asking. Our actions provoke reactions that the ripples affect others around us. With that said, we need to be careful with everything we do, say, and even think, right?
Yeah.
Especially for your confirmation.
Yes, Claudia, it's so good seeing you here. And you're absolutely right. Right, we understand, and this is we. I'm putting especially those of us who study Spiritism. We understand that everything we do, there is an action and reaction. But we also understand something that's quite interesting. Spiritism tells us this is there's a what is it? Let me try to say. There is a cliche that says hell, the road to hell is paved with good intentions, right? And Spiritism tells the other, which is the fact that your intention is the color of the reaction to your action. What am I saying here? If my intentions are pure, even with failing in the divine justice that from our God, our Creator, gives us, is that this will be taken into consideration. It's more in the realm of a mistake than an intentional mistake. And when I see that, is that the inner transformation is like that as well. All that is inside of us, our intention is what we need to look into it. So while the emotion is an expression of what we emote based on an external incident, right? So it's very important for us to see the internal motivation is our own. What is it that is our intention to do this or that? So if let's say we talked about the arrogant person, right? This person is actually carries this air of arrogance because let's put a female. She wants to look very powerful in her position, whatever that may be. It could be as a mother, as an employer, I don't know what. But this person carries herself with a certain position of arrogance and power. And the two things we need to see is this a mask? Is this person creating this arrogant behavior because it is a demand, an expectation that her position puts her in, and people are calling her, you are just the most arrogant person, and after going through inner transformation, now she stops looking so arrogant and start to speak with not the same tone of voice, so on and so forth. But the question is that a position of power is true? She is a powerful person. Inside of her, the motivation is another. Then she should not change who she is. That's the thought process of in that idea of action and reaction, and we still need to be careful. But I urge all of us, Claudia, all of us to look at it from the perspective of it's not just the action, but what was the intention behind. And I would say even broader than action, of our actions, our words, our thoughts, right?
Yeah, a lot of food for thought here for this Labor Day weekend. We'll have a lot to think. Yeah, no, it's especially we definitely sometimes becomes like a self-prophecy, right? I mean, you have this image to other people, and then you almost like you have to keep up with your image instead of
Yes.
trying. It is a lot of work to recognize and change, and then let this new image or new you be part of yourself instead of just oh, she's selfish or he's very arrogant, like you said, and suddenly you that's how that person is perceived, and it's a tough job to change that,
Yeah.
right? But
So
it's us, not for others, right, Marcia? It's
yeah.
our work.
Yeah, so I would say, just to wrap it up, and I mentioned this before, but it's a question of, is it an intellectual study of who you are and how people see you or how you see yourselves, and then you have the checklist, right? I am arrogant, I am this, I am that, or is it that careful discovery, self-discovery of who you truly are, and what are the intentions driving you to react this way or that way. And I think it's so important for us to work and be strong enough, because when we start studying Jungian psychology and all the psychological series of Joanna De Angelis, we come across notions of ego and self and conscious and unconscious, and it's very easy, again, if you look at it from a superficial manner, to start to blame not others now, Tanya, but we start to blame our ego. Oh, it's my ego, right? And we start then to create a movement toward uh, killing our ego. I don't want my ego. And but the fact of the matter is, our ego is our structure created in this life. So we need our ego, and we need to also be kind with the ego. What is the problem is when that ego is become rigid and determines all of our actions, and also suppresses anything that does not match that you created to meet the external expectations and be validated by our society. So I think the danger is when we stop looking ourselves, and most importantly, because we don't look at them, we are afraid of looking our shadow, all the things that we bury inside. So this is an invitation for all of us to really be gentle with ourselves, and to look at it. And if we want to seek outside counsel, right? And I'm not talking about psychologists. I'm just saying, Tanya, hi, I'm now going to learn about myself. Can you tell me about me? And if Tanya sees something, for example, that is my blind spot, right, Tanya?
Mhm.
I'm not aware of it. It's here, but I'm not aware. It's my blind spot. So Tanya can be very cruel to me, and she can say, you're arrogant, you're vain. What else, Tanya? You are this and you're that. Or she can take that moment with great respect and say, thank you for the opportunity. Let's look at it. I believe, let's say, that there's arrogance in your actions. When you try to do this, it's because there's a pride element to that. Let's work on it. Let's explore it together. So you are moving away from your 25%, let's say, of your awareness of yourself, and it's not 25, it's much less, right? Your consciousness is very small in relation to what you are unconscious of. So let's open up, because the more we become conscious, the more we are able to embrace ourselves, our true selves.
Yeah. Well, that's when those who don't like us too much, sometimes they are very helpful, right? Because they will definitely bring those qualities of ours that are not necessarily real good qualities. But
Yeah.
and sometimes we get upset, right? Because
Mm.
of course we don't want to somebody tells us
Yeah.
things that we don't like about us, but
Yes.
um, it's a good friend is the one that will also bring to us, like you said, some points that we can uh, do better, that we
Yeah.
can improve, or at least, for us to get to know that we have that issue to work, right? Nobody can tell us what to do, but at least we are aware, like you said.
Yeah.
And you mentioned about our consciousness and unconscious, but and also, I mean, all that is there from our spiritual baggage, all that is from several reincarnations, right? If we put that into consideration, then it goes even farther back, right?
Yes.
Imagine how
Yes.
many things we don't remember right now about ourselves, and that's another aspect, right, Marcia?
Yes, and it's often interesting for us. The visual that comes to my mind is it's very well used in psychology studies, the iceberg, right?
Mm-hmm.
So as an iceberg, our conscious is the tip of that iceberg that is floats above water, and our subconscious is this enormous 10, 15 times of who we are. And in reality, as you said, Tanya, it's much more than that because we carry the experiences from many, many lifetimes. So from that aspect, when we start talking about conscious and unconscious, it is really interesting to be able to learn or use whatever mechanism to embrace of what we don't know. So another tool, and I did not come prepared to talk about it, but let's pretend from memory. Let's go to talk about it. But it's the Johari's window. Johari's window is used a lot actually by HR departments, right? To talk to how an HR should approach a person, etc., etc. But it basically, Tanya, divides ourselves in four quadrants, right? So the first quadrant is what you know and what people know. So it's your conscious, but it's what everybody knows about you, right? The other quadrant is what people know, but you don't. That's what I said, the blind spot. And then we have that area of where you know, but people don't know. And those are your masks. Let's pretend I am an awful mother, right? I am an awful mother. But when I go to school, what mask do I put in front of my teacher? Oh, honey, my dear, and whatever is in the archives of my understanding of what a good mother is, and I promptly pick it up and I act with those masks. So it's very interesting when you start thinking about it. That area is an area that we don't want anybody to see, right? You invest a lot of your time to build that illusion, that image of who you are. And finally, the last quadrant is your unconscious. And the unconscious is what you don't know and I don't know. But it's very interesting because in the realm of the shadow, I don't know, and most likely you don't know, it's where the growth comes. If I start to look inside of me, I can find not only what I reject, but the incredible potential of our souls, right? It's just there's so much that we can become, and it's all here, who we are. What stops us is our judgment driven way of working, who we are and who we want to be.
Yeah, wow, that's great. Well, I think we had a question from yeah, there we go, Yasko. How to learn how to interpret and deal with the non-said, the silence in a relationship.
Oh, Yasko. That's a difficult one. And I don't really know how to answer, right? Because I think the silence in a relationship, it's similar to the silence in ourselves, right? So it is understanding what is behind it, what is the intention. Is the intention could be simply put two different types. I am a gregarious social extrovert, and the other is a very introverted and prefers the silence. Or it could be, I don't know how to deal with this conflict, therefore I prefer to stop right now and create that vacuum, the silence for me to process that conflict. And there are many studies right now about conflict resolution, right? In terms of how do we deal, and this is beautiful, by the way, right? But how conflict is really not a question of the what, but the why. It is the value behind that conflict. So once we start to look into, again, in that in the realm of our emotional truths, if we start to look at what is it that I value, what are my values in this conflict, and recalibrate, then we're able to subside the silence. I hope this addressed a little bit your question, Yasko.
Yeah, that was a tough one. Let's see if we have some more questions. We have one more. It sounds like sometimes we just think we conquered a virtue, but we are just controlling our behavior as a civilized person we learn to be. What is the difference?
Yes, that's the real question here. And as I mentioned before, early in my journey as a spiritist, I was really taken by the studies in inner transformation, right? And when we start to talk about inner transformation, we take stock of our what we call virtuals, and I like to call it actually our qualities, right? Instead of virtuals, our defects, and I call those our imperfections that we bring in our addictions, our vice, etc., etc. And when we start to be able to see that when we start to be brave enough to start looking at those qualities and imperfections that we have, right? And it's very good to see and to control, right? But the reality is we need to be very careful with the word control. What is it to control? Is to suppress, or is to understand what it is that is leading me to do this or that. So it all goes back to that idea of intention, that idea of what it is that is underneath all of this. The majority of the time, it comes from two things: our still self-centered nature, and our still urging to be what we're not, which is our pride, right? We with this ego create this creation of our ego to be what we're not, and those two things lead the majority of the pains that we feel in life. When we're able to look at them and understand our drivers, our motivations, and be nice to ourselves, then we're able to reinterpret those and really start to get to the root cause of it all.
Yeah, I guess the key is not to pretend to ourselves, right? To
Correct.
be
Yeah.
and conquering, really, I mean, in the pace, in the timing that we need. The problem, sometimes we get anxious that we want to be that perfect person that we learn we should be or will be one day. And we got all messed up. We kind of decided to show, and not even to others, to ourselves. We kind of, like you said, we're so intelligent to justify everything and put masks and kind of, and then we just postpone this real evolution, right? We just kind of keep in this comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
And anyway,
and I think there's something else, Tanya, if I may. I don't know if we have time, but it's important to understand that spiritism, right, gives this direction to become better, right? But the fact is that we have many lives, and our inner transformation will it's a fatal conclusion, right? Our inner transformation will take place through time. to understand first and foremost, I am not a pure spirit is giving room for us to understand that we have our imperfections, right? And Tanya, it may come as a surprise for us in some certain things, our blind spots, but we have plentiful of room to grow. We are infants in our journey to become the spirit one day. So it is important to allow this path in this lifetime, in this incarnation, to understand and keep evolving. So, for example, when I honor my emotions, my jealousy, or my envy, or my pride, whatever is pulsating inside of me, I usually, and this is really hard to say, but I usually imagine that no one outside of me will like or accept me. Right? That's the true about all of this. We want to be loved. We want to be liked. We want to be accepted. But this is the reason why we become so good at hiding what's inside of us, right? And you may say, but what is really the problem? Why can I not hide my basic emotions, who I am, right? But think about it, and I mentioned this in passing. Let's say, I don't know, we want to control things in ourselves, but like in nature, when we don't respect, when we don't truly honor its nature, it leads to natural disasters, right? So if we keep suppressing all that we are, and it can be, as I said before, envy, pride, jealousy, I don't know. If we keep suppressing them, we will somehow get an outlet for that is burning or boiling inside of us. So we need to start thinking, what is the real cost of denying our own nature? What is the real cost of denying our own emotions, right? And the final thought about it is, well, Marcia, are you telling me that I should just give free rein to my emotions? And the answer, no, it's not. But it's to, instead of when you're angry, start yelling or throwing things, breaking things, is to understand what is the cause of that anger. Why is it so difficult for me to deal with whatever that is giving me this outburst of anger, and to want to destroy everything else because right now I feel destroyed? And that's the gist of it.
Well, I think you did what I was going to ask
Uh-huh.
you, which is your final
Uh-huh.
thoughts and remarks, and to stay with us. You know, this thought is definitely something that we should take with us from this talk. It was really, really great. Thank you so much,
Oh,
Marcia. Yeah, it was a pleasure and a very eye opener for all of us on this matter. Uh, and I would like to ask you,
mhm.
if it's not too much, that if you could now, Dane, unless you have something else you'd like to bring to us, and then bring our final prayer to end our life today.
Yeah. I just wanted to maybe go back, right? I talked about Kardec. I talked about what he said in the Genesis, that we are going through a period of transformation. And I just want to remind all of us that this is 1868. Kardec at that time was already bringing this topic, right? And Kardec was cautioning us about this time of transition. So, spoiler alert, we are transitioning from a world of trials and expiation into the planet of regeneration. So, that means that we're becoming less unaware of the evil that is inside of us, meaning the ability to cause pain to ourselves and to others into awareness. So this awareness is what this is all about. And he mentioned to us, right? So what I would like to just leave it here is, like Kardec, to invite us to really look at ourselves and to stop living a life of reaction, right? Let us understand that we can indeed adopt a new way of thinking, a new way of being, right? It's while focusing on our education, our intellectual education, but also to take the time to develop our emotional intelligence, right? And I just want to say thank you, Tanya. Thank you, the U.S. Spiritist Federation, for this opportunity. It's been truly an honor for me to be here. I appreciate this time. And I would like to, with very few words, just to say, if we could all connect with all the spirits of light that are here today during this hour and a half, and we ask that they be here with us, sharing those insights, helping us be stronger with our emotional selves. May the spirits of life bless each and every one of us in our own journey of self-discovery and self-awareness. So be it.
Thank you so much, Marcia. And we invite everyone for next week. Don't forget our weekly series of talks. And we'll have here our guest, Leonardo Vieira from Maryland, and he'll be speaking about our neighbors. So same time, 11 a.m. Eastern time, we'll be together again. Thank you, Marcia. Thank you. Have a great weekend, Labor Day weekend. And let's keep in mind what we learned today. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.